LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the July 2nd edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I've picked out the weekend's 10 best, most newsworthy clips for what should be a really educational, fair use media criticism and political analysis show for you all tonight. I'll start with a little political comedy from Real Time with Bill Maher from his monologue, and I'll have a later clip. I split two monologue clips between the two topics I'm covering. You can see the two topics I'm covering listed down in the video description. It's basically Trump versus healthcare and then Trump versus the media. Those were the two main topics covered in the Sunday morning news analysis shows. I'll be taking clips from all five of the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. The 10 clips I'm using, you'll see I have a clip list. Also, there's a link down to that in the video description. You can follow along my clip list notes and sort of tell who's talking in each clip and what the subject is, even if you can't understand all the little notes I've left to myself. But like I said, I want to start off with the Trumpcare topic, whether Trumpcare is dead. And I'm going to start with a clip from Bill Maher's monologue where he kind of made fun of what was going on with Trumpcare and also Trump's lack of knowledge about healthcare in general, which I will discuss with you after we watch that 1 minute 10-second clip from Bill Maher's monologue. You can watch the whole monologue again down in the video description. There's a link to the entire monologue free on YouTube as a YouTube video. Here's the minute and 10 seconds on healthcare I want to talk with you about here.
Donald Trump says he will not have foreign nationals coming here and killing innocent Americans. That's what the health care plan is for. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There's that one, too, repealing Obamacare. I mean, the Democrats are all excited that this is stalled now in the Senate, except it's not dead. It's like the slasher movie. The serial killer, but we can see he's getting up behind her. These are Republicans, and now they're talking, I love this, they're talking about, forget the replace part, let's just repeal first. So people have nothing. They had a big meeting this week with Trump and all the Republican senators. One of the senators came out and said, I didn't think that Donald Trump had a grasp on some of the basic elements of health care. For instance, he thought Medicaid was a sports drink. Basic grasp. And
So yeah, there's one of the big flaws in the Trumpcare fight for Republicans is they don't really have a president who can lead on Trumpcare. That was the point that I think Bill Maher made kind of satirically in his monologue there, that he doesn't have a firm grasp of the details, and that's kind of an understatement. If you listen to Donald Trump talk about the bills, he obviously doesn't know what is going on in the whole Trumpcare debate. He just wants something that will pass so he can say he repealed and replaced Obamacare. And it's not only his lack of knowledge that's getting in the way, it's also topic 2, which I'll be covering a little later, his attack on the media, his incessant tweeting in a way that I don't think really helps his message. And his war on the media, I've actually, this week's poll question, you can click up on the little, in the corner here, and answer this week's poll question as to whether you think Trump's war on the media is justified and helpful, unjustified and unhelpful, unjustified and helpful, or justified and unhelpful. You actually have all 4 choices. I came up with all the different combinations. I will make the argument throughout this video that it is unjustified and unhelpful. And you'll see I'm going to show you a few news clips about both healthcare and Trump's war on the media, where they juxtapose the two and basically talk about the way Trump is hurting his own agenda, especially on healthcare. And the longest clip on that, you'll see starting with some commentary from Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press this morning. And then he goes on to show the video package, which is like the prepared package, after about a minute of commentary, and I will discuss all of that with you and then compare it to the one from ABC's This Week and from CBS's Face the Nation And we'll talk about all that after we watch them together here.
Healthcare could be so complicated. Mitch McConnell had a simple plan: draft a Republican-only repeal and replace bill, do it behind closed doors, pass it quickly before the opposition could get organized, and then go home for the 4th of July holiday, and with the party having made good on a key campaign promise. Well, one by one, Republican senators began to announce their opposition to the bill, helped along by a Congressional Budget Office analysis that said 22 million fewer people would wind up being covered, and that projected Medicaid spending would fall 35% over the next 20 years. Then President Trump made life more complicated for McConnell by suggesting repealing now and replacing later. Last night at an event honoring veterans here in Washington, the president focused on attacking the media, not on health care.
The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them, because the people know the truth. The fake media tried to stop us from going to the White House, but I'm president and they're not.
Throw in Mr. Trump's tweet storm against 2 MSNBC anchors, which further complicated matters. And McConnell was left with the task of trying to save a bill by himself, which is now on life support.
Mr. Leader, are you going to get to 50 votes on health care by tomorrow? Is that a no?
Republican members of Congress may have left Washington, but they can't escape questions on their floundering efforts to pass a health care bill.
Stand up for the people who are here and saying we need our health care.
On Wednesday, the president promised
healthcare is working along very well. We could have a big surprise with a great healthcare package.
But by Friday, President Trump appeared to acknowledge that McConnell doesn't have the votes, tweeting this: if Republican senators are unable to pass what they are working on now, they should immediately repeal and then replace at a later date. That threw a wrench into negotiations with conservatives who are desperate for a plan B that does not include the Democrats.
I want repeal and I want replace. If we can do those two together in one legislative package, I'm good with that. If we're going to fail at that, we should separate the two. We made a promise to repeal Obamacare, and we should keep our promises.
McConnell quickly dismissed the president's trial balloon, telling reporters in Kentucky that the health care bill remains challenging, but, quote, we are going to stick with that path, pointedly adding, it's not easy making America great again, is it? Repealing Obamacare without replacing it would complicate Republican efforts to move forward if they want to avoid a Democratic filibuster. What's more, Mr. Trump previously said that strategy was unacceptable.
We're not going to have like a 2-day period, and we're not going to have a 2-year period where there's nothing. It will be repealed and replaced.
Then there's the fact that an outright repeal likely has even less support than the current Senate legislation.
I'd be fine with that. I don't think we've got the votes in the Senate to pass that.
The legislative Hail Marys come as Republican opposition to the existing Senate bill is hardening.
I didn't come here to hurt people.
This week, some Republicans have cautiously suggested bipartisanship as a last resort.
The best outcome, I still think, would be a bipartisan bill.
I wish we were doing this on a bipartisan basis.
If for some reason it fails, I think we then the floodgates would probably open to reach a bipartisan compromise.
With the Senate bill on life support, President Trump further complicated the process by spending nearly half the week attacking MSNBC host Mika Brzezinski, drawing rebukes from some of the Republicans he is trying to persuade to support a bill.
You're president of the United States of America, the greatest country on earth. You have a special obligation to be above this.
And joining me now,
So that was the NBC package and commentary on Trump's week, where his tweets really stepped on his attempt to lead on healthcare. Not that he was doing such a great job leading, and he had that whole rally you saw where he didn't mention healthcare at all, although he attacked the media over and over again. I think that line is kind of ridiculous. And I'm president and the media is not president. Well, I mean, was the media running for president? I don't really think so, but it's another piece of Trump ridiculousness. And I thought that was the most thorough analysis of what happened in terms of the politics in Washington, D.C. I wanted to add on this shorter clip from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where Martha Raddatz talked to real voters in Pennsylvania and Ohio, basically Trump voters, or the states that Trump won unexpectedly to become president and to win the Electoral College. And I think Martha Raddatz in these interviews did a good job of showing the real impact of, why it is that people are worried about the healthcare problem, and then also people's reaction to the terrible tweets from Donald Trump. And that's a different angle, I think, than NBC took, so I thought it was worth also showing this and juxtaposing the two. I thought the NBC one was a little bit more pedantic, but it was more thorough. This ABC one has sort of that man on the street part, which gives it, you never know from the editing whether it's authentic or if they're trying to push a message your way. You can let me know what you think after we watch that ABC clip with Martha Raddatz covering basically the same topics in about half the time from the last NBC clip over here.
Coverage now, but is worried about the future.
Tell me what you think when you look at Washington and the healthcare debate right now.
I think that people who have to work for their health care are not going to be able to afford it any longer.
And are you
even
afraid
the state
of losing it?
Yes. I'm afraid our company might have to downsize on the insurance and us pay higher deductibles, which it's already impossible to keep up with them now.
And what would happen just to you if that happened?
To me?
And your family?
We would not be able to afford to go to the doctor at all. So any major surgeries would use everything in our savings accounts.
And it's not just Ohio. In Pennsylvania, where I was recently, they share that concern.
I am a taxpayer, and my health insurance is getting very expensive. I mean, it's so bad that, if I have any issues medically, it's like, do you go to the doctor?
And in this hospital outside Columbus, the doctors are not the only ones paying attention.
And just breathe normally for me.
I don't do much of anything normally anymore.
I noticed that a lot of my patients have been actually expressing their concerns about it, and they never had before. It would affect a lot of the rural hospitals, and it would have a dramatic effect on our communities all throughout Ohio.
You've heard what some of the Republicans are saying. Okay, come on, this will work. It won't. It'll be fine eventually. You're not buying that.
This is really a big tax cut for the ultra-rich, and it's going to come at the expense of the poor, the elderly, and the sick. And I'm worried that this bill will take away a lifeline for some of the most vulnerable people in our society.
But once again, the president distracting from the issues with a series of tweets, lashing out against Morning Joe co-host Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough. His supporters in Ohio don't appreciate the distraction.
Did you see the tweets about Mika Brzezinski and
Nope,
Joe?
I stay away from the tweet feeds, honestly. As soon as it started, I deleted Twitter.
A little juvenile, obviously, for president, but he's a pit bull.
It's like the old playground mentality, you said this, so I'm going to say this, and that's ridiculous.
I wish he'd stop, period. He does not need to do that.
And it was on the topic of those tweets.
And I don't know whether I wish he would stop. I mean, it's bad for the presidency, it's bad for the United States, so to that extent, I guess mostly I wish he would stop. But as a partisan Democrat, I think as both ABC and NBC said in those last two clips, the message of the mainstream media that Donald Trump is still fighting against is, the tweets are hurting your agenda. And of course, Donald Trump came out and said that he was actually using, this platform that, the people on the left, the fake news people are trying to get him to stop tweeting, but they don't understand that he's getting the message directly to the people. It's pretty sad. But there was also that even worse tweet, the video of Donald Trump body slamming a figure with the head of a CNN logo as a head. I used that in the thumbnail, and that'll show up in the media section I'm going to get to later. But before I get to that, I want to finish covering healthcare and finish covering the news coverage of healthcare and Donald Trump versus the media. And this is the shortest of the analyses. This is from CBS's Face the Nation. I think they have kind of the lightest touch on this. They don't have the thoroughness of NBC. They don't have the going out to the real world like ABC did, but there are a couple parts of this that I think are worth watching. It's only a minute and 43 seconds. and I will discuss it with you after we watch together here.
Last week started with a win for the president as the Supreme Court lifted the block on parts of his travel ban. But setbacks and confusion on health care. And an ugly outburst from the president dominated the rest of the week. As Majority Leader Mitch McConnell struggled to find a health care bill that could pass, Democratic offers to help craft a bipartisan bill were dismissed by the president as insincere. Thursday morning, the president embarked on a Twitter rampage, attacking two cable talk show hosts' mental states, intellect, and appearance. This time, there was bipartisan agreement that he'd gone too far.
It was inappropriate, beneath the office, and not helpful.
It is not normal for a grown man to be so consumed with petty vitriol.
Mr. President, do you regret your tweets this morning at all?
And that it was a distraction from important business, like the South Korean president's trip to Washington. Late in the week, the president undermined the Senate Majority Leader's efforts, suggesting Congress split health care reform into two parts. He tweeted, "If Republican senators are unable to pass what they are working on now, they should immediately repeal and then replace at a later date." All this as members of the House and Senate went home for the holiday. Our guest last week, Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy,
there are things in this bill which adversely affect my state,
got an earful from his constituents.
So to step on their necks by kicking them off their health care at this point, that's cool, sir. Go back to Washington, D.C. and stand up for the people who are here and say,
And we begin today with Utah.
So that was the CBS coverage. I think that they emphasized the repeal and replace issue better. I also like the fact that they had some town hall coverage, and we'll see that was a point that I wanted to make on when I talked about Trumpcare last week that I forgot to make is, and I thought CBS made that point the best by using the town hall coverage, that the longer Trumpcare and the Senate Trumpcare bill is out there, the worse chance it has of passing the Senate, because they're going home on their July 4th recess. They're going to be gone for 10 days, and of course you'll see Ben Sasse in just a minute talk about getting rid of their August recess and staying and working on stuff. But the longer they're out there hearing from their constituents about a bill that basically is a big tax cut for the rich, that gets rid of coverage for mostly the poor and middle class, and really doesn't do anything to fix any of the problems with health care. That's not a thing you want politicians to be going back home and talking to constituents about for long periods of time on their break. And you saw from that Senator Cassidy clip with his town hall in Louisiana that it's already starting. And the other point I made about that CBS clip was that they emphasized the repeal and replace movement and how that started. That was actually something that they gave up a long time ago, and Donald Trump said wasn't going to work, and there are a lot of reasons it won't work, but I want to show three senators, and that'll be the last three clips on healthcare. Senator Ben Sasse, who kind of floated this idea on Fox and Friends, and then Donald Trump mysteriously tweeted it just moments later, because that's where he gets all his ideas from Fox News apparently. And then I'll show Rand Paul in favor of this idea, but also kind of showing you why it's not going to work in the way he answers over on Fox News Sunday, talking to guest host John Roberts. And then the last senator will be Bernie Sanders, talking about the real harm from all of this and how Democrats may come to work on it eventually. But let's start with Ben Sasse and this whole repeal first, delay, and replace later, and his explanation of why he thinks that's a good idea, and then I'll talk with you about why it's not a good idea after we watch that clip together here.
Thanks for having me, Jake. Thanks for coming to Nebraska.
So let's do the forensic accounting of what happened on Friday. At 6:19 a.m., you went on Fox and Friends and you touted the idea of first repealing Obamacare, then replacing it at a later date. At 6:37 a.m., President Trump embraced the idea on Twitter, writing, quote, "Republican senators unable to pass what they're working on now, they should immediately repeal and then replace at a later date." Tell us about any behind-the-scenes conversations that brought President Trump around to this, what is a new position for him.
Well, I'm not sure that the TikTok part is all that interesting, but I've been definitely working with the White House and the president's senior team over the couple days leading up to that. But I think the most important thing to say is Republicans ran on repeal and on replace. The president ran on repeal and replace. We've been working on that for about 4 months. And if Leader McConnell can get us across the finish line in a combined repeal and replace, I'd like to see that happen. It needs to be a good replace. But if we can do a combined repeal and replace over the next week, that's great. If we can't, though, then there's no reason to walk away. We should do repeal with a delay. Let's be clear. I don't want to see anybody thrown off the coverage they have now. I would want a delay so that we could get straight to work. And then I think the president should call on the Senate to cancel our August state work period. It's important to work in your state. It's important to travel. It's important to listen to your constituents. But I think we should get straight to work at around-the-clock hearings on the replace plan. But I think we need to do both repeal and replace, and I'm a little agnostic into whether they're paired or separated.
So Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell seemed to reject your idea on Saturday. He said he'll stick with the path of doing it all at once. Have you spoken with Senator McConnell, or have you gotten any sense of how much support there might be among Republican senators for this plan of repeal first, replace at a later date?
You know, I'm a rookie. I'm one of only 5 people in the U.S. Senate who's never been a politician before. I think I'm 91st in seniority, which means I'm mistaken for a page all the time walking through the halls of Congress. So I try to keep most of my conversations with leadership in private, and I try to be constructive. And obviously, Leader McConnell is the leader on this bill. And if in the next week he can get us a combined repeal and replace, again, a good replace, but if he can do that, I'd like to support that. If he can't, though, I think every Republican senator except one, Susan Collins of Maine, is the only Republican senator who hasn't already repeatedly explained that they're for repeal and for replace and voted for repeal. Remember, in December of 2015, every Republican senator, except, again, Susan Collins, everybody voted for a repeal plan. The only thing then was that President Obama vetoed it. Now President Trump would sign it. Again, I want to add a delay to its implementation date so that if we did full repeal, there would be time, but we should get to work on replace. Right now, we're trying to get 50 of 52, plus the vice president, to agree on a really complicated combined repeal and replace plan. I'd like to say, let's do the repeal, then let's try to get 60 out of 100 senators. Let's bring everybody into the room. Let's do this full-time, 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. Let's cancel the August state work period, and let's do it in full public view and have hearings and get to work on something that works better than Obamacare. We pledge that, and the American people deserve that.
So let's talk about what this might mean for...
Now, if this repeal, delay, and work on replace thing was actually going to work the way Senator Ben Sasse, the Republican from Nebraska there, said it would work, then it might be a worthwhile idea. Although, do you notice at the beginning of that clip, he thanked Jake Tapper for coming to Nebraska? I don't know, maybe he means by coming via his, I don't know, via satellite or whatever. Jake Tapper didn't come to Nebraska. I thought that was a little weird about that last clip. But if they were actually going to try to get 60 senators together for some replacement bill, that's not going to work because Democrats have said that if they do repeal, then they're not going to work on replace. They're basically willing to work on repair. Like they'll repair Obamacare, but if once they do repeal, they're not getting any Democrats. And while it sounds good what Senator Ben Sasse was saying in that last clip, if you listen to Senator Rand Paul representing the conservatives, he's in favor of this repeal replace because he's going to like vote for repeal, and then it's up to those moderates to work out what they're going to do about replace. Basically, he sounds like he's going to be done after the repeal thing, and you'll see when he's talking to John Roberts, the guest host of Fox News Sunday, he doesn't really explain how it is that they're going to get the votes for that. Or even what he wants to, he wants to replace, when he's willing to vote for repeal, and he wants to replace it with freedom. And then he also makes this comment at the end about when asked about the tone, the tone of Trump's tweets, he puts it back on the Democrats for saying that Trumpcare will actually result in people's deaths, which I think is wrong, as I will discuss with you after we watch this 4-minute clip from Fox News Sunday this morning here.
Well, let me ask you this question. You just said you're not for spending, so you are for repeal. So if you do this separately, you'll vote for the repeal bill, and there's no question about that. But when it comes to the replacement part of it, where's your vote going to go?
Well, see, my idea of replacement has always been replace it with freedom, replace it with choice, competition, expanded health savings accounts, buying groups, the association health plans that I've been pushing across state lines where you can join a buying group and get a lower price. That's my idea of replacement. So it's funny, back in January, I was pushing repeal and replace because I thought Republicans believed in replacing it with a marketplace. Now I've discovered that at least half of my Senate Republican colleagues think replacement means replacement with Obamacare light, with more federal spending and more federal programs. I'm not for that, but I am for repeal and replace. I want to expand the amount of people to get insurance at a cheaper price, but I would do it through freedom of choice. I would do it through the marketplace, buying groups across state lines, and letting people save more money in HSAs. And I think the problem with Republicans now is they have insufficient confidence in what made America great, and that's capitalism, freedom of choice, competition.
As I mentioned, your colleague from Nebraska, Senator Sasse, has suggested that this was his idea as well. He sent a letter to the president saying that if the Senate does not have a bill by the 10th of July, then let's go ahead and do the repeal and replace separately, and let's work through the August recess in order to get this all done. Would you sign on to the idea of working through the August recess?
I'd rather get it done even before that. In fact, I think you could do this in the next 3 weeks. There are other bills out there that are sitting around that have bipartisan support. Separate, repeal, and replace. If there are big government spending programs that offend conservatives like myself, put them on some other bill. But the thing is you can't get conservative votes, or you can't get my vote. This bill with a bunch of federal spending. You know, we have a five.
I'm sorry, we're having some trouble there with the signal. Senator Paul, hang on just a second. I think we have you back. Go ahead, finish your thought there.
We have a $500 billion deficit, and we're going to have $1 trillion next year. For loading up repeal with a lot of big government spending. So I think if you want conservative support, you split the bills. I think you can get almost every member of our caucus to vote for a clean repeal if there's a concurrent or simultaneous separate bill that includes some of the things that moderates want.
And just before we leave you, we've got about a minute left, Senator Paul. I wanted to ask you about something. You were there in Arlington for that horrible shooting, which prompted a call from many people in Congress to improve the tone of the political discourse, to give more sense of civility. You saw the tweets that the president set out earlier today, unapologetic for it. What's your thinking on that whole thing about what the president tweeted and how that plays into these calls for greater civility in our political discourse?
I would approach it more generically and say that we probably don't need to question our adversaries' motives. So, for example, President Obama, I think, wanted to help more people get health care. I think Obamacare failed, but I don't question his motives or his goodness as a person in trying to do it. In the same tone, I think Democrats that are saying thousands of people are going to die if Republicans pass their health care plan, that's so over the top and so goes to sort of painting people as mean-spirited or as evil. And then you get people who are so crazed by this and obsessed that they'll come to a baseball field and shoot people. You know, there is a problem, and I think we need to both acknowledge we want the same things, but we have to argue over which economic system works best. Does capitalism work best or socialism? And let's have those arguments, and those are valid arguments, but I don't think we need to question whether each of us believe in trying to fix the system and get more people health care.
Senator Paul, thanks so much for joining us, and we wish you a happy 4th of July. Appreciate you coming on.
So not much follow-up there from John Roberts. His follow-up was pretty weak in that entire interview. He never really asked Rand Paul about the flaws with the bill in the Senate and the millions of people who would lose coverage. And you saw there did not follow up on that claim that Republicans claiming that Obama had bad intentions with Obamacare is the same as Democrats saying people will die if the Republican plan passes, when there's actually evidence that the Republican plan would cause thousands of people to die. And I'm going to show a clip of Senator Bernie Sanders in just a sec where he makes that argument. But I also want to point out, if you read between the lines of what Senator Rand Paul was saying there and compare it to what Senator Ben Sasse said before, Rand Paul says, oh, we're just going to stay for a few weeks and, they can try to get their 60 votes for the replace bill, but as long as we get 50 votes for repeal, I'm going back to Kentucky. I'm not staying for August, because He wants repeal and, replace if some miracle happens, I guess, is what I would conclude from that last clip. You can let me know what you think down in the comments section. And before I leave the topic of health care, I want to show one extended clip from Senator Bernie Sanders over on CNN State of the Union talking to Jake Tapper. And he talked about what the possibilities were of Democrats working with Republicans on fixing Obamacare rather than the repeal and replace. And he especially responded to what Ben Sasse said about repeal and delay and why that's not going to work. And then he responded also to what you heard from Rand Paul about it being over the top and a negative tone, to point out the factual results of several studies that if you take away healthcare coverage from sick people, more of them are going to die, and thousands of them will die under the Republican plan. And I will discuss that clip with you after we watch it together.
Senator from Nebraska, he's encouraging his fellow Republicans to repeal Obamacare now, and then at a later date to come up with a replacement if they can't come up with a repeal replace at the same time. If Republicans go down this path, will Democrats be willing to work with them on the replacement?
Well, the answer is that I have a lot of respect for Senator Sasse, but that idea is an absurd idea. As you pointed out, this Congressional Budget Office indicated that if you simply repeal the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, you will throw 32 million Americans off of health insurance, 10% of the population of the United States. For 7 years, the Republicans have been talking about a repeal mechanism. They haven't agreed yet. If you throw, Jake, 32 million people off of health insurance, what doctors who have studied this issue say, that tens of thousands of people every single year will die. What we have got to do, which is common sense, which is what the vast majority of the American people want us to do, is to say, okay, what are the problems? How do we work together to solve them? And we know what the problems are. The Affordable Care Act, under the Affordable Care Act, deductibles are too high, co-payments are too high. We pay the highest prices in for prescription drugs of any major country on earth. 1 out of 5 Americans can't even afford the medicine they need. Those are some of the problems. We're very weak in terms of primary health care. Millions of Americans, even those with insurance, can't find a doctor or a dentist when they need one. Let's put those issues on the table and figure out how we deal with them in a bipartisan manner. Now, second of all, what we should recognize, which is not talked about in Congress at all, is why it is that we are the only major country on earth, Jake. I live 50 miles. I'm talking to you 50 miles away from the Canadian border. Somehow they manage to provide health care for all of their people at a significantly lower cost per capita than we do, and so does every other major country on earth. There is a lot to be talked about. Of course, it can be done in a bipartisan way, but you don't throw tens of millions of people off of health insurance in order to give $500 billion in tax breaks to the richest people in this country, to insurance companies and drug companies.
Just for the record, some of those millions that would not have health insurance would be choosing not to have health insurance because there'd no longer be a fine. But let me ask you about the ones who would be...
Wait a minute, Jake. Let me just...
I'm pivoting to the Medicaid...
That is true.
Yeah, go ahead.
I understand that. But that is true. But again, we are the only nation that doesn't cover all those people. You have today, you're right, 21-year-olds who are feeling great. They never get sick. They're healthy. They go out and they get hit by a bus. Their life is destroyed because they're going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars paying for it. In my view, as a nation, we should join every other country, guarantee health care to all.
I want to get to that in 1 second, but I just want to ask you to clarify. I've heard you say this before about tens of thousands of Americans will die. Where does that come from, and can you explain how they will die if they don't have insurance?
Sure. The answer is it comes from PolitiFact, which, tries to verify what public officials say. Last week, just on a Sunday show, I made that point. PolitiFact checked it out, and what they ended up saying during the week is Sanders was right. And they listed a dozen different studies. People can go to my website, sanders.senate.gov, and get that information. A dozen different studies from scientists and doctors say what is fairly obvious. Jake, if you have cancer, if you have heart disease, if you have diabetes, and you don't have any health insurance, you know what? There is a likelihood you will die. And what they said is that if you throw, one of the studies said that if you throw 23 million people off of health insurance, which is what the House bill did. Up to, no one knows exactly the number, up to 28,000 people a year, a year will die from that decision. So what we're talking about is a disastrous bill. And second of all, what I would say, Jake, there's something really weird that when you have the AMA, the doctors, you have the hospital associations, you have the AARP, you have almost all of the healthcare organizations who know something about healthcare opposed to this bill. Leader McConnell still refuses to hold hearings to hear from doctors and nurses and from hospital executives.
So I want to ask you.
So I think Bernie Sanders did a good job there of refuting, like I said before I showed the clip, the points you saw from the previous two Republicans, Ben Sasse on the whole repeal, delay, replace idea, and then, of course, Rand Paul on the idea that it's a over-the-top negative tone to claim that there are going to be people who die from the Republican version of these bills. I was reading the live comments along the way. I saw this one, if this import will work. This is from Third Eye 2020. Remember the words death panels from 7 years ago, and I guess Obamacare didn't end up having death panels that killed people, but people losing their health insurance who have cancer or diabetes or a variety of other conditions that need continuous care. Studies show that thousands of them will die or get much sicker if 32 million people lose Obamacare just through repeal, or 23 million through the current repeal replace bill that can't get through the Senate. So that's the point I wanted to make there. And I want to move on. So that's the last clip on healthcare. And the next topic is this really vicious attack from Donald Trump against the media, and especially against Morning Joe, a show I sometimes watch. Morning Joe, of the choices I have in the morning. I'm certainly not going to watch Fox and Friends, or unless I'm looking for Fox News bias clips. And I mean, they're just, I mean, talk about over the top. Fox and Friends is over the top. I almost made a video about Ainsley Earhart's over the top fawning interview of Donald Trump. You know, that was so smart when you told James Comey that you might have tapes of your conversations. That, well, it wasn't really stupid. I almost made it. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here, but before I get to the viciousness of Donald Trump attacking Mika Brzezinski, I mean, I'm not a big fan of either Mika Brzezinski or Joe, Morning Joe himself. For some reason I'm thinking Joe Rogan, but I know he's not. His name isn't Joe Rogan, and I'm like, anyway, I don't like their opinions that much, but they have some good discussions on their panel, and it is MSNBC, which is more reality-based than Fox News and less boring than CNN. And before I get to the clips actually talking about this, and I'm going to show a Bill Maher clip making fun of it, I wanted to thank one of my Super Chat contributors, my one Super Chat contributor last month, Turtle Tracks, sent me, this is kind of relevant, I think, to the vicious attacks from Donald Trump. He's like so full of hate, and I think this is more about LGBTQ issues, but I appreciate this image that Turtle Track sent me that he wanted me to show when he made that Super Chat contribution. If you're one of the 200 live viewers I have right now, you can click on that $, and the Turtle Tracks $20 contribution last month, unfortunately, I think was more than all my ad revenue for the video. And I spend all day Sunday, every Sunday, putting these clips together. So if you want to help me out through that means, through the Super Chat contributions, I appreciate that. And now I'm going to show you the next Bill Maher monologue clip where he made fun of Donald Trump and attacking Morning Joe and Mika Brzezinski, and I will talk about that clip a little more after we watch. It's a little over 2 minutes from Bill Maher's monologue last Friday on HBO's Real Time over here.
But there's so many important things going on, but never mind all that. Morning Joe is in a Twitter feud with the Real Housewife of Pennsylvania Avenue. So let's get right to that. Oh, yes. It all started yesterday when President What the Fuck poop tweeted another gem. You got to get him off the shitter. That's where the Twitter. I think it's the shitter and the Twitter. I think they're connected. But, you know, he's been seething over the criticism that he's been getting for months from Morning Joe and Mika and, you know, who he now calls low IQ crazy Mika and psycho Joe. So he tweets, you know, if they hate me so much, then how come they came to Mar-a-Lago around New Year's Eve and insisted on joining me? And then the leader of the free world writes, she was bleeding badly from a facelift. That slapping sound you heard yesterday was the entire country going... Yes. Once again, Donald Trump has taught this nation a valuable lesson. You can never be too rich to be white trash. You know, a little advice, Mr. President, a good rule to live by. If you're going to go after a woman's appearance, first make sure you're not a fat old man with orange face paint. Pretending to be a blonde at the age of 71. Who's a blonde at 71? Mika Brzezinski, you do crazy things to delay aging, says the man who glues dryer lint to his head.
And I like the way Bill Maher pointed out the one thing I didn't see on any of the other, you know, the corporate news media coverage, that Donald Trump was making fun of people's appearance when he is, you know, fairly repulsive. I don't know. I guess people's appearance is subjective, but it's hard to think. Are there people who have like a fetish for that particular look, the Donald Trump look? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe it's the big long tie. Some people like that big long tie. I don't know. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I enjoyed that monologue from Bill Maher. I thought that he sort of introduced the subject pretty well, and I do want to show just a couple clips. In addition, first I want to show Martha Raddatz over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. She's the like permanent co-host or substitute host, or I can't remember what her title is, but she had this guy on, Thomas Bossert, who is the Homeland Security advisor for Donald Trump, and the show was late enough that Martha Raddatz was able to ask him about this latest tweet from Donald Trump, where he showed himself like body slamming and punching. It's a clip from the WWE, Worldwide Wrestling or whatever, where he was a character and came to the ring and like body slammed and punched some guy or fake punched, and he took the guy's face and put a CNN logo. I actually saw some reporting that it might have come from some like alt-right, neo-Nazi or somehow white supremacist or some sort of right-wing site actually was possibly the creation of this, or at least they had a GIF. Although you'll see that I say GIF because the G in GIF comes from graphic. You'll see Martha Raddatz actually says the word GIF when she asks the Trump administration Homeland Security advisor whether this is inciting violence and whether it's a good thing. And you'll see he talks about what a great platform it is for Donald Trump to use social media to go over the heads of the biased fake news mainstream media, or I don't think he says fake news, but that's pretty much the gist of Martha Raddatz's attempt to get him to say it might be inciting violence. I mean, I'm not saying it's a true threat that is like actionable under criminal law, but some people might see the tweet as threatening, and you'll see it at the beginning of this questioning from Martha Raddatz on ABC this morning over here.
Security questions and security concerns, but we've just had the president tweet a GIF that I want you to take a look at. You can see it right there. Obviously, President Trump has taken some video and put a CNN mic logo on who he's beating up on. Can I just get your reaction to that?
Well, my first time seeing it, Martha, but first, thank you for having me on the show. I very much appreciate it. I guess my first reaction to that tweet would be the same as any of the president's tweets. There's a lot of cable news shows that reach directly into hundreds of thousands of viewers, and they're really not always very fair to the president. So I'm pretty proud of the president for developing a Twitter and a social media platform where he can talk directly to the American people. In fact, he's the most genuine president and the most non-politician president that we've seen in my lifetime. And he's demonstrated, whatever the content of that particular tweet is or any tweet, he's demonstrated a genuine ability to communicate to the people.
He certainly can communicate to the people, but I want to ask you, is that the kind of communication you want, that he's beating up on somebody?
Well,
that he's beating up on the media? Right. You're in charge of Homeland Security there. Yep. That seems like a threat.
Yeah, certainly not, though. I think that no one would perceive that as a threat. I hope they don't. But I do think that he's beaten up in a way on cable platforms that he has a right to respond to. And he does that regularly.
And you don't think that's a threat to anyone? You don't think that's sending a message? Do that to the media? Do that to CNN?
No, I certainly don't. I don't think so. And I think that importantly here, he's a genuine president expressing himself genuinely. And to be honest, I think that's why he was elected. He's the most genuine person, and the people that see politicians and then see him find him to be someone that they can understand and relate to. And so,
okay, I got to stay on this for a minute. Yeah. Sarah Sanders said recently, the president in no way, form, or fashion has ever promoted or encouraged violence. If anything, quite the contrary. Yeah. He's simply pushing back, defending himself. But you know what happened to Congressman Scalise, and you have these messages out there against the media. The media has had, and I hate this to be all about us, but he's making it about us, or particularly CNN, I suppose. Some people had to get private security guards. Yeah. Is that really fair?
Yeah, so I think that the most important part of my message isn't just that he's genuine. It's that he's found a way of communicating directly to the people without going through whatever the media outlet is.
But I understand that. I'm talking about the message, not how he communicates.
But it's a good example of you or the media producers here deciding what it is that we talk about and what it is we don't talk about. And so, with respect, I think that that's why he needs to go around you and the producers that control the message and directly to the people and whatever he cares about speaking about that day. And occasionally he cares to speak about those cable programs that are beating up on him unfairly.
And with respect, we do talk about other issues, and then when something like this comes up, it distracts from what we really wanted to talk about.
And you're a very substantive person. I know we're going to talk about substantive issues.
Yes, we are.
So I appreciate you asking me, but I do think
I appreciate you, and I appreciate you answering that. So let's talk about something that's on the minds of Americans, and we've watched.
So that was a little bit weird that the Homeland Security advisor for the Trump administration wouldn't admit that anyone could possibly see any sort of threat from the GIF or GIF, or it seems like maybe I should have made that the poll for the week as to whether the GIF or whether it's GIF or GIF. But actually, if you want to answer the poll for this week is whether Trump's tweeting his war with the media. You saw that takedown and punching of the CNN logo, and then the Mika Brzezinski and Morning Joe feud. Is that helpful? Is it justified? I think it's unhelpful and unjustified, but I've given you all four possibilities there. You can let me know what you think by clicking on the poll there. Last week's poll, last time I checked, 100% of people thought that Trumpcare would not pass the Senate by July 4th, and that turned out to be accurate. So you know what you're talking about out there, and I appreciate the live viewers and the people watching the recorded show. And before I finish, I have one more clip. This is kind of like the last clip in that it's a media personality trying to get or media pundit, a host of one of the big five corporate outlets. This is Chuck Todd over on NBC's Meet the Press, trying to get an official from the Trump administration to in any way criticize Donald Trump for saying vicious, nasty, unhelpful, unjustified attacks like the the Mika Brzezinski plastic surgery attack. That's basically what Chuck Todd is talking about. And he starts off he gets sort of the same answer you heard from Thomas Bossert in that last clip. And then Chuck Todd comes up with this idea, well, if you were talking to your son and he had tweeted what Donald Trump tweeted, what would you say to him? And I thought that was kind of a novel idea. But then Tom Price, the Health and Human Services Secretary, who is the Trump official who was on Meet the Press this morning, he actually comes up with his own novel response, which, spoiler alert, instead of it's beneath the dignity of the presidency to tweet this, he comes up with the idea, well, it's really beneath the dignity of a show like Meet the Press with such a long history to even discuss this issue, which I will discuss with you after we watch the final clip of the broadcast tonight over here.
At the tone of the president's tweets, many Republicans in the Senate condemned the personal attack on Mika Brzezinski and attacking on her looks. You had Lindsey Graham saying it was beneath the office. Ben Sasse, this isn't normal. Jeff Flake, beneath the dignity of the presidency. Susan Collins begging, this has to stop. Lisa Murkowski begging, this has to stop. Does his behavior bother you?
Well, what I'm concentrated on is the job that he's given me, and that is to make certain that we fulfill the mission of the Department of Health and Human Services, which is to improve the health, safety, and well-being of the American people. And there are a whole array of activities that we're undertaking. One of them is this piece of legislation that's in the Senate right now. But my job is consumed by making certain that we fulfill the mission at the department.
I'm just asking you as a father, if your son tweeted about a woman like that, what would you say to him?
Chuck, you know, this is really remarkable. You got incredible challenges across this nation, incredible challenges around the world. The challenge that I've been given is to address the health care issues. And your program, a program with the incredible history of Meet the Press, and that's what you want to talk about?
I don't.
Let me just suggest to you that the American people want to talk about the challenges.
Let me just suggest to you that the American people want... Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, you're blaming me for what the President of the United States has spent his entire week focused on?
No. Listen to me. With all due respect, the American people are concerned about a health care system that is not providing choices, where premiums are going up, where there are insurance companies vacating markets all across this land, and that's what they want us to concentrate on. That's what they want us to fix, and that's what I and the President are working on.
Why isn't the President devoted to this as you are?
Oh, I think that he is. Absolutely. The fact of the matter is that he can do more than one thing at a time. And the challenge that he's put before us at the Department of Health and Human Services is to make certain that we not only just address the issue of this health care piece of legislation, but address the United States' role in the world as it relates to pandemic influenza, to address the United States' role in the world as it relates to research and development, to make certain that we're on the cutting edge of the incredible innovation that's available to decrease human suffering. Not just in the United States, but around the world. That's the challenge that he's given to us.
Okay. Secretary Price, I don't think a lot of people envy sometimes the position that the President puts you in. I understand that. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
As we've said,
well, that was a pretty understanding way for Chuck Todd to finish the questioning of Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price there. You know, I don't envy the position. You have to come in and defend Donald Trump for these nasty tweets. And anyway, I don't think anyone could really defend the tweets, but you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I saw some of you asking for Sandy along the way. I actually posted a picture of Sandy settling in for some of the clips on my Facebook page, facebook.com/LiberalViewer, and it's also at twitter.com/LiberalViewer, and even my Instagram, which, believe it or not, is LiberalViewer. But if you want to see that picture, here's the Sandy picture. There you see Sandy in front of a #LiberalViewer sticker and my constitutional law casebook from a long time ago. But if you want to get one of these no, not this side, #LiberalViewer candles, you can see here burning in the background for a lifetime contribution on Patreon of $30. You can link down to my Patreon page down in the video description. I've been giving those out every month, and I have a few more people who qualified this month. So become one of my patrons on Patreon, and if you donate $30 while there's still some of those candles left, I'll send one out to you. Otherwise, you might get one of those stickers or some other reward system I may come up with. But unfortunately, with the YouTube advertising revenue situation, I have to talk about the Super Chat donations. I appreciate I got a $2 contribution I saw earlier, and the Patreon patrons, I have to thank them every week, because without them the YouTube ad revenue would not be enough. I apologize for having to talk about the funding of my YouTube channel so much every week, but I appreciate those of you who help support me that way. Also, the people who just show up and support me at over 200 live viewers, the recorded show viewers just giving me supportive comments, telling me to keep going every week. Every Sunday for over, what is it, like 4 years now, I've spent every Sunday putting together the best clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows, the political comedy, although I guess for about a month now Bill Maher's going to be off, and I'll just have to find political comedy from the irony and the sadness of our political system here in the United States, and I'll be doing that next week and for the foreseeable future. Thanks for joining me, and I guess until I have time to put together some sort of edited produced video, or until next week when I put together my Sunday live clip roundup, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.